Hello and welcome back to the channel. It's still, as you can tell from the hat, fleece, jacket, it's still pretty cold outside and not too warm in here, but bit of general maintenance again on the Bonneville. Today I'm going to change the fork oil. It's a job that sometimes gets overlooked, along with things like the changing the brake fluid every couple of years and also the fuel filter inside the fuel tank. The schedule, the Triumph schedule says it should be changed. The fork oil should be changed every 4 years, or 24,000 miles, I think it is. Well, most of us, that will be 4 years. Now, as mine is a 2009, so it's 15 years old now, and I've owned it for 14 years. I've never changed it, so it's well overdue. Fork oil, same as any other oil, it will lose its viscosity and it will degrade. So it's a job that, while the weather's like this, it's a job I'm going to do. Before I get started, I will just ask again, if you're not already a subscriber, if you would consider liking and subscribing the video, be very grateful. And it doesn't cost a penny. It's completely free of charge. It just helps me to every now and then I can have a look at the analytics and see what videos people are watching and what's the best content to try and make. So before we get on with it, there's one or two things before we jack the machine up. There's one or two things you need to do prior to that, so we'll just go through those. It's a good idea to slacken the main spindle nut off. It's quite tight, so it's a good idea to slacken that off before you jack the machine up while it's still steady. So there we go. Just crack that off. Another good idea before you jack it up is to slacken the two top nuts off. Now, if you were just changing the fork springs, what you'd have to do is, if you didn't want to, you just no need to take the fork legs out to change the fork springs. But what you would have to do, obviously you can't get them out because of all this, is take the bar clamps off, put some cloth over there, take the handlebars off. But because I'm taking the fork legs out anyway, I'm not taking that off. So 22 millimeter AF, you can use an open-ended on this, or a socket, but you obviously can't get a socket in unless you take that off. So what I'm using is a crow's foot, 22 mil crow's foot. So we'll just slacken those off a couple of turns. They're going to be quite tight at the moment because you can feel that under tension. I'm only going to crack them off a couple of turns, just to make it easier when I've got the fork legs on the bench. Another good idea is to, sometimes you have to just slacken off the pinch bolt, the top pinch bolt, because that can grip the thread. But there we are. I'm quite fortunate. They're okay on mine. Some people have said they can't undo the top nuts, and no matter what they do, one, it's because they're under tension, and two is because they're a bit tight. So that's the wheel nut slackened off, and those just cracked off a little bit. Right, we're nearly ready to jack it up. You'll notice I haven't taken the sump guard off. Now, normally you would have to take that off because there is a gap normally between the sump guard, no matter whether it's Tec or by Motone or whatever. There's normally a gap at the front end anyway. At the back, it does contact where it bolts onto the frame rails. But most of the way down there, from here down to where it contacts the frame rails, there's a gap there. Now, what I've done, I've always found it a pain. If you want to jack the bike up, you've got to take this off first. So what I've done, I've found some 8mm thick dense rubber, and I've cut two strips about that long, cut two strips about 20mm wide, and glued them onto that. I mean, you can't normally see them, but what it does, it allows me now to jack the machine up, and the rubber takes up the gap between that and that, so it's not going to distort the sump guard. So let's get it jacked up. There we go. It's supported on the paddock stand at the back, so that's That's nice and stable. That should be enough. The other thing we have to do is remove the brake caliper, obviously to allow the front wheel to come out. So it's a 12mm socket, and have a bungee cord or something else, piece of string, piece of wire, to support this out of the way while we put any strain on this. So we'll crack those off. 1, 2, there we go. 2, I'm just going to unhook the hose out of there. Just give that a little waggle now. Give it a little waggle, it spreads the brake pads and allows it to slide off nicely. Here we go. I'm going to hook that. We'll hook this round there. Round up. Whoops. Where should we hook this? Let's put it in there. There we go. Put that round there. Down there. Just keep this out of the way. Put that down there somewhere. There we go. So that's I'm not putting any strain on there, so that's out of the way now. I'll just put the bolts back in so we don't lose them, and give me a good chance to give that caliper a proper clean before we put it back on, because usually you can't. I can't get that. There we go. And also, while the wheel's out, we can give the rest of that a good clean. So we're ready to remove the front wheel now. Right, next we need to disconnect the speedo cable. So it's just a Phillips screwdriver. There we go. That should pull straight out. There we go. Now what I normally do now is, while that's dangling, the inner cable or the inner wire can sometimes come out from inside the clock, which is a bit of a pain to get back in again sometimes. So what I'm going to do is just put a bit of tape over that, just to hold it in place. Again, I'm going to undo it from there, pull it round the back here out the way. Next thing is to slacken off the pinch bolt on the bottom of the right hand fork leg. There we go. There we go. That's just slackened off. Right, now we can 19mm spanner on the other end of the spindle. There we are, wheel nut off. Put that on there. Now it's just a case of easing the spindle out. Sometimes a little bit easier said than done. There we go. Ease it out. Drop the wheel down. There we go. Keep the space. There's a spacer there, and the speedo drive on the other side. So we'll just keep. I'm just going to put the spindle back in. Pop the spindle back in. Pop the nut back on. There we go. Put the wheel out of the way. Give that a good clean before we put it back on. Next, mudguard's got to come off. So, mudguard off. M12. 12mm socket. 1. 2. 4, 3, 4. And that should just pull out. There we go. And we'll put that out of the way. So now we'll slacken off the pinch bolts. One, top one. Get down here. There we go. Both slackened off. So in theory, it should just pull through. So far, so good, as they say. There we go. One fork leg. So what we're going to do now is take the cap off. What I'm going to do is put that over the top and basically unscrew the leg itself. I can feel the tension's gone now. The fork leg is extended, so the tension's off now, but just in case I'm just going to keep that. There we go. There we go. We can now remove the spacer. One spacer. Now there should be a flat washer down there. Drop the magnet in. Like fishing. Ah, there we are. One washer. Up there. Now, very special tool. Piece of wire with a hook on the end. We should be able to fish. There we go. Fish out the spring. Just do it nice and gently to let the oil drain back into the fork leg. We don't want to. I know I'm going to change the oil. What I wanted you to do was before I empty the old oil out, my light's gone. Hang on. My auxiliary, I've dropped the thing back down inside now. My auxiliary light that I've been using, my work lamp, when the battery's going low, it flashes, which is very distracting. So I've turned it off. So, like I say, what I'm going to do, I'm going to be careful how I drain. Normally, if I'm changing the oil, I'll just pull this out, tip the oil out. But what I want to do, just out of interest, just for my own interest, I'm going to let as much drain back in there as I can. Where is it? There it is. Just lay that on a piece of cloth. What I'm going to do is check the air gap as it is now, and then I'm going to tip it upside down and measure how much oil comes out. So I'm just going to rest that on there. Have a bit of a tidy up. There, you can see I've hung the fork leg up off the ceiling, letting it drain into that clean empty measuring jug, and I'm going to have my tea and come back later. Right, so drained all the oil out of that one now. I did monitor how much came out, and I did measure the air gap. I measured the air gap with a steel rule. The oil that came out wasn't quite as much as I was expecting to be in there. Not much less, I don't know, 10 mil or something less. And the air gap was slightly bigger, which would tally up. Because when I changed the springs a couple of years ago, obviously you lose a bit of oil, there's some clinging to the spring, and you'd lose some dripping. and I've just done it again, so I've lost a little bit more, so I'm not too concerned about that. So I'll be filling it with Silcoline 10 weight, which is the original weight of oil that the Triumph recommend for this fork, and it seems to be all right for me. What I thought I'd do is just show you that I've dug out the original springs. This is the original Triumph spring and the steel spacer. You can see it's just a standard linear spring. The coils are equally spaced all the way up. Oops. These are the Tec progressive springs. You can see that it's a linear spring up towards the top, and then you've got the tighter coils there, which are slightly softer than the main part of the spring. So the theory is, or the practice is, that the top part of the spring absorbs the ripples and the small bumps, if you like, and then because it's slightly softer, and then if you hit a bigger bump, which is fairly common these days, then the main spring takes over. As I say in my other video, these were a real good investment. Hagen do them, Tec do them. There's two or three companies do them. I'll put a link to Tec. As you know, I've had a few parts on the bike from Tec. The other thing that's a little bit odd is in the manual there are two, up to a certain chassis number, I think it's 120mm air gap and 460 odd millilitres of oil. And after a certain part number, which is what mine is, a certain chassis number, sorry, you've got nearly half a litre, 499ml of oil, and a smaller air gap, 106ml. And there's a lot of chatter on the forums. Why is it different, this, that, and the other? And one guy came up with what he thinks is the solution, and it's all to do with the end cap. He said there's two part numbers for these end caps, one part number for the early one and one for the later one. This one is the later one, obviously, because it's come off my machine, and it's hollow, as you can see there. The previous chassis numbers, it's a different part number for that, and that is solid. In fact, it's got a small protrusion, so maybe that's the air gap. I don't know, but whatever happens, I'm sticking to the original. So let's get on with filling the oil back up. Unfortunately, you've just missed me filling the fork leg up with the Silcoline 10 weight oil. The camera went off for some reason. I just went to check. Anyway, the oil is in there. I've put a bit more in than I needed to, because we're going to check the air gap, which is more important than the quantity of oil, because the Haynes book does say put X amount of oil in, 499ml, check the air gap. If the air gap is too low or too high, tip some out or add some in. So they put more importance on the actual air gap. So the camera had gone off. So the oil's already in there. That's what I'm saying. So now it tells you to compress and extend the leg, and so that the oil is absorbed into the damper rod, which is down inside there, which is obviously been emptied. And I can feel it. I can hear it gurgling. It tells you to compress it about 10 times. But I'm going to do it until I'm fed up, basically, probably 30 or 40 times. So I won't bore you with that. Right, so I've pumped that, must be, I don't know, 30, 40 times. It's stopped gurgling, and it's now stopped gurgling and spluttering. I've left it to stand. Just ensure that that's right at the bottom. As I say, you're supposed to, that's it, I just heard it bottom out. So that's bottomed out. Now, for the gadget, I've had this for some time now and not used it. So, as I say, it's supposed to be 106mm air gap from the top of that tube to the oil. So here we have it, a fork oil level. So you've got a sliding ring there, sliding stop. You set this, which I've already done, to 105, 106. Lift that up. Bring that over here. Just make sure that's still down. Yep, that's right the way down. You pop that on the top of there, ensure it's upright, and then you withdraw any excess fluid, which there is. You need 2 hands for this, really. Oh, that's it. You've got to create a vacuum. There we are. So that is now 106mm air gap. Fixed tricks. Apparently I'm not saying fixed tricks enough. My grandchildren told me, as the channel is called Fixed Tricks Grandpop, I should be saying it more often. Make sure that's still down, which it is. So now, first of all, the spring goes in and the tighter coils to the top. So we pop the spring back in. Whoops. Wipe my hands. Then the flat washer. Make sure this goes in. Can't see it, so I'm assuming it's gone in flat. I'll just pop that in. Make sure that's gone in flat, which it has. I'm taking oil out. Oh no. And then the spacer. And we can extend that. There we go. We can get the cap back on. A couple of threads started. It does say to use a socket if you can, just to get a bit of pressure on it. There we go. That's got it. Just nip that up for now. I will torque it up. As you can see, it's virtually impossible to torque that up while it's while you're trying to hold it. So that is now ready to go back in the frame. I've cleaned the fork leg, cleaned all the clean all around the seal and everything. So I'm ready to put that back in the yokes. Right, here we go. Back in there. It's all square. There we go. Whoops. It seems to be. Oh, there we go. That was just out of line. It is up here as well. That's a bit awkward. What it's doing is it's trying to push that rubber ring that's holding that's sealing that. There's one at the top and one at the bottom. It's trying to push it out. So, oh, there we are. There we are. It's gone in now. So I'm going to position this now with the top tube level with the. There we are. Perfectly flush with the top of the fork yoke. There we go. I'll just nip the bottom clamp up. There. The top one up. There we are. I'll torque these up. I'll torque these up in a minute. Initially, just stop the fork leg dropping back out again. Here we go. We set the torque wrench to 23 Newton meters, which is the torque setting for this machine. Put it round there. Here we go. That's that. And we've reset the torque wrench to 27 Newton meters with the yoke clamps. So we'll just torque those up. One. Get an extension for that. I've got hands are a bit greasy here. There we go. There we go. 27. Top and bottom 27. And what I tend to do is I've got, as you see, I've got a clipboard there. I'll tick those off now. So when it comes to the end of the build, if it hasn't got a tick, it hasn't been torqued. So we've done the top cap, the fork yokes. That is a bit of a pain. These ears can come out of line, and so anyway, it's in now. The rubber seals are in place. As we can see from the condition of the fork stanchion, there hadn't any moisture gone in there, and it certainly wasn't rusty. So that's that. Now I'm going to do the other side. I'm not going to bore you with that because it's exactly the same as the process I've done to this side. So I'll stop filming now. I'll do that, get that back in, and then we can start putting everything back together. Right, as you can see, done the other fork leg, done the oil, put the spring in, the spacer, washer, torqued it all back up, but we are now 1.5 hours down the line because this rubber ring here in the fork shroud came out. You can see I had a little bit of trouble on the other side, but it actually came out, the rubber ring. What a pain in the bottom that was. In the end, I had to disconnect the headlamp here so I could move this around. It must have took me 45 minutes, an hour to get that rubber ring back in. I was beginning to think it had swelled up because there's a bit of WD-40 on it or whatever, it just swelled. But word of warning, if you're doing this job yourself, if that comes out, walk away, have a cup of coffee, have a cup of coffee like I did, and come back to it. So now what we're going to do is refit the mudguard in there. Right, offer that up. There we go. I've already cleaned the bolts. Spring that in there. I'll get a bolt in, I think, just to hold it. I've already cleaned those. Put a bit of copper slip on them, copper grease on them, alloy slider. So I'm just going to nip them all up first. There. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, fixed tricks. Next thing, the wheel back in. Well, this can be a bit fiddly. Before I started to put it back in, I'll give the brake disc a good clean with brake cleaner. I've cleaned inside the hub and everything, so any sticky, any oily finger marks are off the disc now. So I put a bit of grease on the spindle. On this side you've got the speedo drive. That's got that's 2 little ears that holds on. there's the spacer for that side. I put a bit of grease on that just to hold it in place. So now this can be a bit tricky. Sometimes it goes in first time, and others it doesn't. Here we go. Fix tricks. Right, now put the nut back on there. $19mm on the spindle end. Remember the pinch bolt is undone now, so 24mm on there. And this, the front wheel, is quite a high torque, so I'm just going to nip that up, and I'm going to, oh, that should be rotating. Oh, the reason I stopped then, it's okay now, just nip it up now. I wasn't sure that the speedo drive had engaged, but rotate the wheel and I can feel the drive dog turning, so it had engaged. Just me being paranoid. So we'll just tighten that up best we can, and I'll torque it up when it's down on the ground, and do the pinch bolt up. So the next thing to do, I think, is put the caliper back on. So we'll pull that off its which way round are we? Here we are. Just square the pads up a little bit. There's a little bit of dirt I've missed there. Clean that off while we can. There we go. Put that back in its clip. Oops. There we go. Again, I'll clean these and put a little bit of copper grease on them. One thing I should have mentioned originally, once you've taken the caliper off, you obviously don't touch the front brake lever, even by accident, because it could push the pistons right out. What I have got a piece of rubber actually that I normally, oh, excuse me, there we go. I have got a piece of rubber that is exactly the same or slightly thicker than the disc, which I normally slip in between the pads just in case by accident. I do move them. Now I do know the torque value for these, and I've already set the torque wrench to 28 Newton meters, so we'll torque those down. 1, 2, brake caliper back on. Now of course the lever will be a bit soft initially while it, here we are, we pumped. Right, we can get it off the jack actually. Whew. Right, I'll just lower it down off the jack. The handlebar straight, more or less. There we go. Now we can torque the front. Now this is 60 Newton meters, so the big boys come out now. There we go, 60 Newton meters. And we can now tighten up the front fork pinch bolt, which is 27. I've already set that to 27. There we go. So we're there now. Let's pull the jack out and give the forks a bit of a pump. Well, no untoward noises coming. Oh, one thing I haven't done is reconnect the speedo cable. Now I have actually had to jack it back up again, mainly because if you can see there's the speedo drive turning, so I wanted to be able to turn the front wheel. Just note where that's actually in line. Which way is it turning? You've got to engage that little tang in there. There we go. Put the little screw in. And the Phillips screwdriver. This doesn't need to be over tightened. Whoops. Oh, fingers and thumbs. I've had too much coffee, I think. Right, there we go. All done. Right, we're off the stand. Yep, feels good. Right, let's go and find some potholes, which won't be difficult. Right, so that's that job done. Now I'm just going to nip out for a, well, I always say a short ride, but it always turned into a longer one. But the temperature this morning is quite low. It's about 1 degree. So see how we get on. Make sure there's no rattles and bangs and the wheels all tight and everything. It should be, but you never know. So off for a little test ride. Well, I'm going to call that a pretty successful test ride. Nothing rattling, nothing banging. Everything seems to be working. Is the suspension better for changing the oil? Honestly, I can't tell the difference, but it's done now. It's changed, so that's a job ticked off. I have to say it's pretty cold this morning. I think it was either 0 or 1 degree. Been out for say about 40 minutes. Hands are still toasty, thanks to the old RST heated gloves. I have had them on the second setting, the medium setting, this morning. After the first 15 minutes or so, it got a bit chilly. But again, I'll ask you to like and subscribe if you wouldn't mind. It does help. One other thing I've noticed from the analytics on YouTube is the fact that a lot of people that watch, say, this video haven't seen any of the others. Some of the comments I get as well, you get the idea that people haven't seen. If you've watched this video, you've obviously either got a Bonneville or you're interested in the Bonneville. Go through my channel. there's loads of features on there, loads of films on there about maintenance, modifications, ride outs I've done. Just have a look. And if you wouldn't mind liking and subscribing, be very grateful. Anyway, only half a mile down the road now. Nice hot cup of tea, and that's it for the day for me.